Time to round out my preview series of the NFC. It's time for me to take a look at the last remaining division in that conference, the NFC West. The St. Louis Rams had a pretty shitty 2011 season. They finished 2-14, way back in the pack in the NFC West, and were banging it out most of the year with the Indianapolis Colts to see who would end up winning the Andrew Luck sweepstakes. And the Rams couldn't even get that right. They ended up winning 2 fucking games, and as a result, ended up with the number 2 pick in the draft. So no surprise, gone is Steve Spagnuolo. In is former Tennessee Titan head coach Jeff Fisher, who's being expected not only to provide some leadership and some legitimacy based off of his coaching pedigree and resume, but also be very instrumental in all the front office decisions that the Rams make. On offense, it really all begins and ends with Sam Bradford. This is a guy that they took number 1 overall in 2010. And I know sometimes I sit here and talk maybe way too much about quarterback, but the fact of the matter is you have to have good quarterback play in the NFL if you're going to win football games, especially big-time football games late in the season in the playoffs. Bradford had a solid rookie season and stunk up the joint last year with a combination of injuries and inconsistency. It's a shame the Rams have wasted a good portion of Steven Jackson's career with some very shitty football teams. Remember a little over a decade ago when this used to be the greatest show on turf? Ugh. You go from having guys like Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt and Azahir Hakim and Ricky Prohl and Marshall Faulk in the backfield and Kurt Warner to now you've got Sam Bradford and Danny Amendola and Brandon Gibson. Anybody wonder why the Rams suck? Yeah. When you look at the defensive side of the ball, middle linebacker James Laurinaitis is a stud. Make no mistake about it. One of the best middle linebackers in the league. And the building block of what you try to piece together on defense. He's the one. He's the focal point. He's the eye of the storm. He's what you want to build that defense around. But, you know, they've spent high first-round picks on guys like Chris Long and Robert Quinn. And Chris Long's had some moments where he's been pretty good. But when you take a defensive end number 2 overall, he doesn't just need to be pretty good. He needs to be one of the best, if not the very best, in the league at his position. And Robert Quinn needs to establish in year 2 that he could be a legit, consistent starting defensive end in the NFL. When you look at this Rams season, we could talk about Sam Bradford, and yes, his development is important. It ultimately is going to come down to this in 2012. The Rams did not take RG3 number 2 overall. They traded back. The Redskins took RG3. And the Rams decided, and Jeff Fisher decided, that they had so many holes in other places that needed to be addressed. They took Michael Brockers 14th overall. They spent second-round picks on guys like Brian Quick and Isaiah Peed and Janoris Jenkins, and a third-round pick on very talented defensive back, but very troubled defensive back, Trumaine Johnson. Those guys are going to be the key this year. If you're going to watch the St. Louis Rams, after looking at maybe a Sam Bradford, and you want to appreciate James Laurinaitis and Steven Jackson before his career is over, the guys that you want to watch to see if the St. Louis Rams are going to start righting the ship and start building their way back to respectability are the guys like Brockers and Pete and Quick and Jenkins and Johnson. Because if these guys can come in and establish that they're legit NFL starters, and as a result prove themselves to be viable building blocks and pieces for the future, then the future is going to look up for the St. Louis Rams. I expect the Rams to probably win 4 or 5 games this year, in large part because Jeff Fisher has a history of getting a lot out of very little. Look at all those Tennessee Titan teams that won 9 games, 10 games, 12 games, 13 games. And you look at them on paper, you're like, how the hell did they win that many games? It's because Jeff Fisher is one of the best coaches in the league and oftentimes doesn't get the respect that he deserves. I'm kind of surprised, quite frankly, the Arizona Cardinals had the season that they did last year. Yeah, they finished second in the division and they only had an 8-8 record, but they had so much inconsistency at the quarterback position. Cobb kept going down and getting hurt, and when he played, he was good one game, bad the next. Or Skelton came in and he was kind of With that shaky and inconsistent quarterback play, this team did still finish 8-8. When I look at the Arizona Cardinals in 2012, I could talk about this and I could talk about that. I could talk about them bringing in Michael Floyd. I could talk about the fact that I think they have a pretty talented defense that at times can get some pass rush on people in that 3-4 and, has the ability sometimes to be very stingy and very tough. It really does come down to the offense. This is a big year for Ken Whisenhunt. The Super Bowl appearance is a couple years in the rearview mirror, and Kurt Warner ain't walking through that door anymore. So the bottom line is the Arizona Cardinals have decided that John Skelton is going to be their man to start the season. Personally, I like Skelton better than I like Kevin Kolb. Yep, I like Skelton better than I like Kevin Kolb. But is that really saying a whole hell of a lot? They do have some talent on the offensive side of the football. They've got Williams and Beanie Wells. That should be a nice 1-2 combination in the backfield. You've got Larry Fitzgerald and first-round choice Michael Floyd on the outside and other guys like Roberts and Early Doucette. So there are some weapons for Skelton or Kevin Kolb or whoever the hell is going to be quarterback for that team all season long to work with. But that offensive line is atrocious. And now Levi Brown, who is mediocre himself, is out for the year? That doesn't exactly bode well for Skelton staying upright and staying healthy and playing all 16 games. And same thing goes for Kevin Kolb. When I look at the Cardinals in 2012, I expect this to be a team that slightly regresses. Whisenhunt's a good, solid football coach, I believe. But when you get that much inconsistent play at the quarterback position, I think that's going to be a distraction all year too, is whether it should be Skelton or Kolb or anybody else other than these two guys. I expect the Arizona Cardinals to finish around 7-9 and actually finish third in the West this year. Hey, Seahawks fans, remember when Charlie Whitehurst was supposed to be your quarterback of the future? Ouch. How'd that work out for you? Yeah, exactly. The Seattle Seahawks finished 7-9 and third in the NFC West last year. And when you look at it, could you really expected anything more than that? You actually probably should be pleasantly surprised. Tavares Jackson was your starting quarterback. And Pete Carroll found a way to still get that football team to win seven games and be competitive in several others, with Tavares Jackson as the starting quarterback. So, it's no surprise that the Seattle Seahawks went into the offseason looking to address the quarterback position, because Tavares Jackson isn't going to take you to any promised land except home early. And that's what they did. They signed free agent quarterback Matt Flynn from the Green Bay Packers. And remember when Matt Flynn was supposed to be your quarterback of the future? Ooh, maybe not. The Seahawks pulled a bit of a surprise in the third round of the draft this year, and they took former NC State and Wisconsin quarterback Russell Wilson. That was a bit of a shock then, especially since they had just given Matt Flynn quite a bit of money in free agency. Well, Matt Flynn gets hurt. Russell Wilson steps in the preseason, does well, and now apparently this is going to be Russell Wilson's team. And I'm not saying whether that's the right decision or the wrong decision, but that just is what it is. And that's really where everything's going to start on this offense. Sure, you've got Marshawn Lynch in the backfield, who I absolutely love. He's a big physical stud. You want to see one example of what a stud looks like. Look at the run in the playoffs 2 years ago against the New Orleans Saints. But outside, the cupboard is a little bare talent-wise. Sidney Rice is solid. Doug Baldwin's kind of And Golden Tate needs to prove that he belongs in the NFL, damn it. Stop eating so many damn donuts and start busting your ass on the football field. Their offensive line is okay, but nothing special. I like Okun at left tackle. James Carpenter, their first-round pick last year, was a mistake. He sucks. Now we flip to the defensive side of the ball, which is really how the Seattle Seahawks were able to win 7 games last year. Their defense was pretty good, and at times I thought really damn good. And maybe that's why Pete Carroll, when he went into the offseason, decided that his number one priority was attempting to get an edge rusher for that defense, because their front four was very damn good against the run. I saw them several times last year. But one thing that they did struggle to do at times was create consistent pass rush from the outside from the defensive end position. So as a result, Pete Carroll took a gamble, a big gamble, and drafted Bruce Irvin, the outside linebacker / defensive end from West Virginia, with the 15th overall pick. I know I had my things to say about it back in April, but the bottom line is they expect him to be a KGB type of guy, Kabir Bajabia type. And if that is what he is, then he will end up being worth that 15th overall pick. He has an incredibly explosive first step. And this is a guy that could potentially put up KGB type 12, 13, 14 sack season type numbers and really provide that freaky speed edge rusher on the outside that really brings a new element to that Seahawks defense. Because I really think that Seahawks defense is not all that far away from being a top 5 or top 10 unit in the NFL, which shouldn't be that surprising, especially with Pete Carroll at the helm. He's known for his defenses. As a result, it wouldn't be that big of a surprise to anybody, I don't think, that's where his emphasis is going to be. He thinks his defense is closer than his offense, so get that defense up there, and then hopefully you can get the offense to catch up. I look at the Seahawks going into 2012. It'll be interesting to see what Bruce Irvin does. We'll see if the Seahawks can put out there a top 5 or top 10 defense. But it will ultimately come down to the quarterback position on the offensive side of the ball. Is Russell Wilson going to establish that he's the type of leader of men that even at times, if he struggles, can still will a team to victory and get the guys on the defensive side of the ball and the guys on the offensive side of the ball to follow him, to be led by him, to rally behind him, to support him? That's going to be the ultimate question. I do expect, barring an injury, that Russell Wilson will probably keep Matt Flynn on the bench most, if not all, of 2012. The only knock really on Russell Wilson coming out of Wisconsin was his height. He has arm strength. He has great football smarts. He's a great leader. I would not be surprised to see the Seattle Seahawks win 8 or 9 games and finish second in the NFC West. In spite of the disappointing way the 2011 season finished for the San Francisco 49ers, that organization has a lot to be proud of. They finished 13-3, ended up getting the number 2 overall seed in the NFC, and beat the New Orleans Saints in the playoffs, and probably should have beat the New York Giants in the NFC Championship game. Alex Smith, who had been solid if not spectacular most of the season, didn't really come through, and in particular on third down situations in that NFC Championship game. And if it wasn't even for that, if it wasn't for those 2 special teams fumbles by Kyle Williams, we're probably talking about the Niners in the Super Bowl, and perhaps the Niners being the Super Bowl champions, because I do believe they would have beat the New England Patriots. The San Francisco 49ers are built first and foremost on a dominant defense. You have Patrick Willis there, and you have other pieces in place as well. This was a top defense all year last year, and I would expect more of the same in 2012. And it's no surprise then that Jim Harbaugh would try to beef up the offensive side of the football. I wasn't surprised at all when they threw their hat into Peyton Manning sweepstakes. They should have. It was worth the gamble. And I'm not surprised Peyton Manning didn't go there for 2 reasons. 1, ego. He wants full control of the offense more than anything else, something Jim Harbaugh wasn't going to give him and shouldn't give him. Peyton Manning at times has been his own worst enemy, especially in big games. And Harbaugh didn't want to relinquish that control. I know it. And damn it, I can't blame him. And the other thing is, Peyton probably didn't want to play in the NFC because he knew if he faced his brother Eli in the playoffs, Eli would play better in big-time situations and push his shit in. Only Super Bowl Peyton Manning ever won was because Rex Grossman fucking gave it to him. What happened when he faced a real quarterback like Drew Brees? He lost, got his shit pushed in. Tracy Porter asked, "How's my ass taste, Peyton?" Fuck Peyton Manning. Anyways, so Alex Smith was teasing that he was going to leave, but he's back. They've brought in some new weapons. They just don't have Vernon Davis and Michael Crabtree and Frank Gore anymore. You've brought a LaMichael James second-round pick out of Oregon into the fold. Brandon Jacobs from the Super Bowl champions into the fold. And along with Kendall Hunter, I'm sure are going to provide some relief and some support to their top running back, Frank Gore. They've brought in Randy Moss off the retirement list. Brought in free agent Mario Manningham from the Super Bowl champions. Spent a first-round pick on a wide receiver. So they did a lot to try and beef up that offensive side of the football. The defense is going to be dominant again, I believe, in 2012, barring a series of injuries. I don't think that'll happen. The offensive side of the ball, they've got more weapons there. It comes down to one player, as much as any other team in the entire league. It comes down to one player. If Alex Smith can be a little bit better and play a little bit more like a number 1 overall pick and come through in some big spots for this team, the San Francisco 49ers can win the Super Bowl this year. If he doesn't, this is a team that will still win the division, but probably get bounced in the first round of the playoffs. I expect Alex Smith to improve slightly this year. I expect the Niners to maybe win 11, maybe 12 football games this year, win the division, and do some real damage in the playoffs this time around. Let me know what you expect out of the NFC West in 2012. I'm the Schleg Daddy. And next up, I'll be starting my look at the AFC by taking a look at the AFC West.